Welcome to this specialized module on AWS security for Cloudera data platform. Today, we are focusing on the AWS Key Management Service, or KMS. Data encryption is non-negotiable for enterprise workloads, and understanding how CDP integrates with AWS KMS is the key to securing your data lakes, data hubs, and persistent storage. We will cover the what, why, how, and when of managing encryption keys effectively. Let's begin with the basics. What role does AWS KMS play here? Cloudera CDP uses AWS services like EC2 for compute and RDS for metadata. AWS KMS is the service that holds the keys to encrypt these resources. Specifically, CDP uses KMS to apply server-side encryption to the EBS volumes. These are the disks attached to your virtual machines and the RDS instances that store critical metadata for Hive and Ranger. By integrating with KMS, CDP ensures that if a physical disk were ever compromised in the data center, the data would remain unreadable without the cryptographic key. Visualize the CDP environment sitting on top of the AWS cloud. It relies on two main storage components, RDS for metadata and EC2 EBS volumes for node storage. AWS KMS sits centrally as the security authority. The diagram shows arrows flowing from KMS to both RDS and EBS, illustrating that KMS provides the encryption keys required to lock down these storage layers at rest. Why should you move beyond the defaults? AWS provides AWS managed keys automatically, but for production, we recommend customer managed keys, or CMK. A CMK gives you, the customer, full ownership. You control the rotation schedule, you define the policies, and you can delete the key if necessary. Crucially, CMKs allow for granular auditing. You can track every time CDP uses your key to decrypt a volume via AWS CloudTrail. This level of visibility and control is often a strict requirement for regulated industries. This chart compares your encryption strategies. On the left, the AWS managed key offers a simple setup, but comes with limited control. On the right, the customer managed key path is highlighted as compliance-ready. It unlocks critical features like audit trails and user rotation, making it the preferred choice for enterprise security. How does CDP apply these keys? It follows an inheritance model. When you register a CDP environment, you define your CMK once. The data lake and free IPA clusters automatically inherit this key to encrypt their resources. For data hubs, they also default to using the environment's key, which simplifies management. However, if a specific data hub handles highly sensitive data requiring a separate key, you can override the default and assign a unique CMK during that cluster's creation. Trace the flow of the encryption key. It starts at environment registration where the environment CMK is defined. Notice how this single key flows down to automatically secure the data lake, free IPA, and standard data hubs like Data Hub A. However, look at Data Hub B. It breaks the inheritance chain, accepting a unique project CMK for isolation. Now for the technical how. Simply creating a key isn't enough, you must grant permissions. The cross-account IAM role that CDP assumes needs permissions like KMS, encrypt, and KMS, decrypt. But here is the most common failure point. You must also explicitly grant access to the AWS service role for auto-scaling in the KMS key policy. Because CDP uses auto-scaling groups to launch nodes. If the auto-scaling service cannot access the key to encrypt the volumes, the instance launch will fail immediately. This diagram illustrates the dual permission requirement. On the left, we have the CDP cross-account role making API calls. Below that is the AWS auto-scaling role performing volume actions. Both of these entities feed into the AWS KMS key policy in the center. Only when the policy permits both inputs does the flow continue to the right, resulting in successfully provisioned encrypted instances. We discussed disk encryption, now let's discuss object storage. Your S3 buckets holding the actual data can also be encrypted. By default, CDP often uses SSCS3, which manages keys transparently. However, for higher security, you can use SSCKMS. If you choose this, you must ensure that every IAM role accessing that bucket, such as the ID broker role or the log role, has the KMS, decrypt, and KMS, generate data key permissions. Without these, the services will be unable to read the data you stored. Here we see the S3 bucket and the decision point for encryption type. If you choose SSCKMS to use your customer CMK, notice the dotted line connecting the CMK to the ID broker role. This signifies a dependency. The ID broker role must have explicit permission to use that CMK, otherwise, its access line to the S3 bucket is effectively cut. How do we implement this? First, create a symmetric key in the AWS console in the same region as your environment. Second, edit the key policy to add the permission blocks we discussed for auto-scaling. Third, during the CDP register environment wizard, toggle the switch for customer managed keys. Finally, paste your key ARN into the field. A critical note, ensure you use a single region key. Multi-region keys are not currently supported and will cause errors. Follow the sequence. The admin starts in the AWS console, creating the CMK and updating the key policy. The console returns the key ARN. The The admin then moves to the CDP wizard, registers the environment, enables CMK, and pastes that ARN. CDP then calls back to AWS to validate access before confirming success. For the highest level of security, typically required for FIPS 140-2 Level 3 compliance, you can integrate with AWS Cloud HSM. In this scenario, AWS KMS doesn't generate the key material. Instead, it uses a custom key store backed by dedicated hardware modules in your VPC. You must initialize the Cloud HSM cluster first, then link it to KMS. To CDP. This looks like a standard CMK, so the integration is seamless provided the underlying permissions are correct. This diagram shows the advanced flow. The CDP Data Hub requests encryption from AWS KMS. However, instead of using shared software keys, AWS KMS proxies that request down to a custom key store. This store is physically backed by the AWS Cloud HSM hardware modules at the bottom, providing the highest level of cryptographic assurance.